Mr. Teefank, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General Mark Smith, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, December 12th, 2023. It is 9:30 a.m. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Please let the record reflect what Commissioners Suthers, Shields, and Garcia are present. And we have a quorum.
Thank you. We welcome everyone attending this morning. The Police Commission is committed to ensuring equal access to its meetings. It is requested that individuals who require the services of a translator contact the board secretary no later than the day preceding the meeting. Whenever possible, a translator will be provided. Sign language interpreters, assistive listening devices, or other auxiliary aids and/or services may be provided upon request. To ensure availability, you are advised to make your request at least 72 hours prior to the meeting you wish to attend. All public comment will be heard on item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. The order of the speakers will be: a speaker in this room will go first, then we will take a speaker watching today's meeting on Zoom. We will alternate between speakers in the room and Zoom for a total of 45 minutes. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board. So, you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinion shall be deemed off-topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. If you wish to just listen to the meeting, you can call into the phone numbers listed on the agenda that are designated for call-in and listening. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at the meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there is a need for the board to carry out public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person, you are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with only 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. While in the boardroom, members of the audience must be seated. Standing is not permitted. In the past, standing may have been permitted for a few, but moving forward, this courtesy will not be afforded to attendees except for credentialed members of the press. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. At this time, we will move to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief Moore.
Good morning, Commissioner President Suthers, Commissioner Shields, Commissioner Kalanchi, Commissioner Garcia, to our Inspector General, our Mr. City Attorney, and Mr. Teefank. As I do each week, I'm going to speak about some significant events as well as our crime and personnel strength. As we enter the holiday season, the department continues to have a number of engagements throughout the city on parades and toy giveaways and various other celebratory activities. But I want to draw particular attention to a youth-adult dinner dialogue that we had just this last week in partnership with General Manager Capri Maddox, the Civil Human Rights and Equity Department. This was the 11th session that we've had this year, sitting down with a group of young adults and police officers from across the city to have dinner together. We were joined by Commissioner Courtney Morgan Green, who will prepare a report of a series, including the results of pre and post surveys of young adult community members as well as our officers. Over a couple hours, we participated in a series of discussions on a variety of topics involving public safety as well as interactions with the police. My thanks to Commander Ruby Flores and her team in organizing this event, as well as Deputy Chief Tangarides and Commander Pinto, who was there for their attendance and participation, as well as the young people who came and shared their evening with us. Second event I wanted to talk about that significantly impacted Los Angeles was the President of the United States visited last week. He was in town arriving Friday afternoon late and left Sunday midday. Over the course of his visit, he attended a series of fundraisers, which were by and large uneventful, with the exception of Friday night. Now, that event, a fundraiser, was held at a private residence, which happened to be located across the street from a neighborhood park. Protesters organized a demonstration with the theme of shutting down the event. Over the course of the late afternoon and early evening, more than 1,000 demonstrators gathered in the park, engaged in a series of slogans and announcements and otherwise peaceful activities. In preparation for the demonstration and acknowledging a number of social media posts encouraging those in attendance to shut down the event, the department, working with the Secret Service, established a safety zone around the residence, as well as took actions to facilitate the demonstration with surrounding restricted parking, as well as the ability to give clear directions of how protesters and demonstrators could gather in their activities in the park. Unfortunately, about 2 hours into the demonstration, members of the group began throwing objects at officers and arriving guests. An unlawful assembly was declared, and uniformed officers ordered the group to leave the area. Simultaneously, due to the congestion at the event site, a number of guests were stuck in their cars on the street leading up to the event, which happened to be adjacent to the park where the demonstrators had gathered. Members of that demonstration then surrounded some of these cars, and at least one vehicle was vandalized. Our people moved to the location of the cars that had become trapped, and the group dispersed to Wilshire Boulevard, eventually working their way to Westwood, where they disbanded about 9 o'clock. Reports from the group included information that at least some portion of the march would attempt to gain access to the 405 freeway. I'm grateful for California Highway Patrol resources that readily assisted the department in guarding access to the freeway, and no incursion occurred. Unfortunately, over the course of this 5-hour event, members of the demonstration and march graffitied various locations in the park and at some businesses along their path. Given the lack of lighting in the park as well as the size of the crowd, we were unable to initially identify those responsible. Our Major Crime Division investigators are gathering video evidence and other information in an effort to identify those responsible. There is no report of injuries to our people, demonstrators or members of the community. There were no arrests or uses of force. As I relayed to our people on Friday night in the aftermath of the demonstration, I'm proud of the senior leadership team that was there, as well as our supervisors and rank and file, many who came in from their home on a day off in order to meet the deployment needs. Each of them performed with discipline and professionalism. Supervisors on scene remained flexible to the changing temperament of the crowd and measured in their use of crowd management and crowd control strategies. Our team worked effectively with the U.S. Secret Service to ensure the safety of the President of the United States, as well as the surrounding community. An example of this was the suspension of the temporary flight restriction over the location when the ground commanders on scene requested our airship to assist in situational awareness of the demonstrators who had surrounded the attendees' cars and the path of the march. On my next subject, I want to speak to the critical value of our Air Support Division resources. As was widely reported yesterday, we have received the City Controller's final report on his study of the department's helicopter operations. Let me be crystal clear. The Los Angeles Police Department helicopter patrols provide invaluable protection to police officers and residents alike. The activities of Air Support Division play a critical role daily in our public safety mission here in Los Angeles. Their flights frequently result in their arrival at calls for service ahead of patrol units, while also aiding responding officers with critical information and situational awareness. The impact helicopters deliver showcase the best practice and strategic expenditure that maximizes safety dividends. The predominant commitment of our airships is regular patrols aimed at proactively identifying criminal activity and standing ready to respond swiftly to officers' urgent calls for assistance. It is critical and crucial to acknowledge that the air support program is not an isolated expense, but a strategic investment in the safety and security of our community. Its worth is woven into the fabric of a safer, more secure Los Angeles, where swift, vigilant presence of helicopters serve as a deterrent to crime, a lifeline in emergencies, and a constant assurance to residents who trust in LEP's commitment for their well-being. Secondly, I stand by this department's efforts and our people's work to provide access and transparency to the Controller's office over the course of this audit, including his senior staff and auditors. Our efforts along each step of the way were to ensure clear and honest dialogues occurred, and as people had access to any information that we possessed. I am disappointed in the characterizations made yesterday by a senior staff of the Controller's office, and for the Controller, while standing there, not correcting the record. I found the remarks unprofessional and counterproductive, and have conveyed that perspective to Mr. Cole, the Controller's Chief of Staff. That said, one of the department's core values is quality through continuous improvement, and I've directed a full review of the now completed report, including its recommendations, and will provide a comprehensive written report to this board upon its completion. My next subject is a tragic set of circumstances involving an officer-involved collision resulting in a fatality. Tragically, this past Friday evening, an officer assigned to our Community Safety Partnership Bureau was on duty and driving a marked patrol unit when she struck a pedestrian at approximately 5 p.m. near Century Boulevard in McKinley in South Los Angeles. Unfortunately, the pedestrian later died at a hospital. Our officer was alone and traveling eastbound Century Boulevard when she struck the pedestrian who was crossing the street outside of a crosswalk. Our major collision investigation team responded to investigate this collision. And while we're at the very preliminary stages of this investigation, I have very serious concerns regarding the officer's driving leading up to this collision. Information we've gathered to this point indicates that in addition to her traveling at a high rate of speed, it appears she inappropriately activated her emergency lights as she traveled along Century Boulevard. After the crash, the officer broadcasted an officer needs help call and made the request for a rescue ambulance and began providing chest compressions and rendering aid to this pedestrian. The involved officer was treated for minor injuries at scene. The results of this major collision investigation team investigation will be presented to the Executive Fleet Safety Review Committee. Additionally, I have directed the initiation of a complaint investigation regarding the officer's actions, and that investigation will have full access to the collision investigation. The involved officer in this matter has been placed on administrative leave at this point. Next, I'm going to cover a non-tactical unintentional discharge, address that as well as a categorical use of force that happened during this period of time. The non-tactical unintentional discharge occurred on the 5th of December at approximately 11:50 in the morning and involved an on-duty plainclothes vice sergeant assigned to the Topanga Community Police Station. There, the sergeant, while standing in the vice office, was preparing his handgun for an upcoming training when he inadvertently discharged one round, striking a nearby refrigerator. The round did not exit the refrigerator, and no other officers or employees were in the vice office at the time this occurred. No one was injured as a result of this incident, and Force Investigation Division's investigators responded, and they'll conduct their investigation, and the results of that investigation will be brought before this commission. Next issue is a non-categorical use of force that occurred again on December 5th at about 12:30 in the afternoon. Then, on the 5th, Northeast Division uniform officers received a radio call of an assault with a deadly weapon suspect in the lobby of the Wells Fargo Bank located in the 7300 block of North Figueroa Street. As officers arrived at the location, they were met by the bank manager, who identified the involved individual as a Forrest Michael Perry, a male white, 32 years of age, and that he was still seated inside the location. The victim also stated that Mr. Perry had threatened to shoot him. Officers detained Mr. Perry and handcuffed him. During the investigation, one of the officers standing near Mr. Perry, when Mr. Perry suddenly became agitated and attempted to kick out the officer, which resulted in a categorical use of force. During that use of force, the officer his hand came in contact with the front of Mr. Perry's neck. The officer's grasp lasted approximately 3 to 4 seconds before it was released. While Mr. Perry remained agitated, officers controlled him and escorted him out of the bank. He was placed under arrest for criminal threats and transported to the station for processing. No officers, community members, or Mr. Perry himself were injured as a result of this incident. As a precaution, he was seen by medical staff and was cleared for booking. However, given the nature of the contact with his neck by the officer, and it is subject to a categorical use of force investigation, and again, the results of that investigation will be brought before you for final adjudication. In regards to transitioning to the crime picture, we continue to see a reduction in violent crime in all categories with a 3.9% overall reduction. We've seen 60 fewer homicides this year versus last, which is a 16% reduction. Robberies are down 5.7%, aggravated assaults are down 2%. challenges we are experiencing continue to be particularly on the property crime side of the ledger, and those particularly involve personal theft and retail thefts. Yesterday, Mayor Bass convened a group of regional leaders from the retailers across Los Angeles, along with Captain Lopez and myself, Deputy Mayor Brian Williams, to discuss the department's efforts working in concert with our retailers to counter this increase that we've seen in retail theft operations. Overall, we have a Part 1 crime increase this year now of 1.3%, again, driven entirely by the increase in the property side of the ledger. In regards to our officer-involved shootings, we've had a total of 34, which remains unchanged from last week. Last year, that total was 31. We have a total of 16 fatals this year. That last year, at the same time, that number was 14. Moving to our personnel strength, we have 8,984. That's an increase of approximately 33 additional police officers in our sworn ranks. Our civilian professionals stand at 2,621, and that's no change, remains unchanged from my remarks with you last week. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much, Chief. Before I move to my fellow commissioners, again, I'd like to thank the men and women that were assigned to the visit by the President of the United States. I know it was a very challenging evening on Friday, and your command staff performed exceptionally well given the circumstances. So I'd just like to convey on behalf of the Commission our thanks for their professionalism with regards to what happened out there that evening. And I'll move to Commissioner Kalanche for any questions or comments.
Thank you, President Suthers. Chief, thank you for moving swiftly on the traffic collision involving our officer. It's really important, and my condolences to the family of the person that was struck and killed. Regarding the regarding the air support audit, also appreciate that you're moving to address these concerns. I would recommend, Commissioner Suthers, maybe a committee could be a committee of the executive committee to work closely with the department to address these concerns. I know that the value of air support, I've seen it myself, and we just want to make sure that we can respond to some of the concerns and ensure also that data is being collected that can reflect the importance of the air support units, and if there's any implications on the community as a result of our program. So I would just recommend that we form a committee of the commission to work closely with the department. But thank you, Chief, for responding to the audit quickly and willing to provide any data that is needed to make sure that we can respond to any concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll be speaking with Vice President Shields today, and we have our executive meeting with the Chief this afternoon, and we'll take that up right away. Moving on to Vice President Shields, any comments or questions?
Thank you, President Suthers, and I echo all of the sentiments that have already been expressed. And with regards to the air support review and recommendations, do you have a time frame as to when you anticipate the department reviewing and responding to the report?
I would estimate that we should have something in front of you within 60 to no more than 90 days.
Great, thank you, Chief. And one thing that I'd like to raise that hasn't been completely addressed here is I had notified you of a couple of instances of officers dealing with critics of LAPD and asked that you look into those things. And I understand that, complaints have been potentially done in regards to those. One was relating to an officer or officers stopping someone who was spitting on the sidewalk, and another relating to potentially complaining or threatening the use of DCFS. And I just want to, make sure that the department is being appropriately messaging to officers that, critics of LAPD should not be treated, unfairly or improperly, and also kind of the proper use of LAPD resources. And just because someone can do something, you might not want your officers to take action in every instance.
Absolutely, Commissioner. The instances that you described are active investigations. I've asked for them to move quickly through them, fairly, gather the evidence, gain the officer's perspective of what information is there. We have at times limited information by what video clips are there, so we want the full story, but I also want, I think, the certainty of that it needs to be done expeditiously. This is not something that should take months and months to get resolved. I also believe that these are isolated and do not represent the vast majority of the men and women that are going out each day and doing the types of professional policing, constitutional policing that we expect. So when they fall short, we will call that out and we'll own it and we'll take corrective action. Certainly, the spitting on the sidewalk is not, the circumstances of that has been described. Very disturbing to me. Wrong section. This is not an offense that we typically enforce. Threatening or trying to intimidate someone regarding the social services involving another individual. Again, that's not the actions that I expect our officers to be engaged in. And I know that they can be faced with trying individuals, and certainly they can wear on them as far as their efforts to push their buttons, so to speak. But I believe that, again, the vast majority of the time, our officers are able to navigate that successfully and de-escalate and move away from those conversations that are not productive.
Thank you, Chief. And I completely agree that these are aberrations, but they do undermine the community's, faith and trust in the department unnecessarily, and really detract from all of the good work that the men and women do in the department every day, including the restraint that they showed while objects are being thrown at them during a demonstration, that no arrests or use of force was taken. So I do applaud those efforts, and I do appreciate your quick response to the issues when I raised them. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, thank you, Chief, for the report. I'm actually excited to hear the reduction in homicides. So you said 60%, 60 homicides less, 16%.
Yes.
And even the trend in general. Last year we saw a reduction from the previous year, and this year we're seeing a reduction. So that's great. And the question is, what would can you share a little bit about, and I know this is a bigger question, maybe a bigger conversation, but what are some of the factors that are potentially impacting the reduction in crime, and what are some of the partnerships and strategies that we can continue strengthening to see that reduction in crime
Thank you. Great question.
specifically?
And I'll say that, Commissioner, in addition to the 60 fewer homicides, we have 112 fewer shooting victims. So it's amplification. About 34 of those fewer homicide victims are individuals that at the same time last year were victims of homicide who were experiencing homelessness. We see a 15% reduction in violent and Part 1 crime, overall crime in regards to houseless individuals. So I believe that the efforts with Mayor Bass, as actually today is her 1-year anniversary as the mayor, but her Inside Safe efforts and the comprehensive manner in which she's approaching these, at times, long-standing encampments that have proven problematic in the sense of safety within the camp itself or within the surrounding community is paying dividends. We're seeing safer streets, cleaner streets, and we're seeing people who are getting housing and supportive services. So again, a significant portion of the reduction is in the homelessness. On the other side is that we still see gang crime in this city representing far too much shooting violence. Over half of our homicides still are gang related. What we are seeing success in is our outreach and engagement utilizing community-based organizations out of the GRID office, and the added support by, again, Mayor Bass to invest more deeply in those groups. And I know that they're currently studying our GRID zones and evaluating our GRID providers to ensure that they are responsive, that they're out in the streets as ambassadors and as peacemakers during the hours and times in which this violence has occurred, and that they're working with each other, not so much the police department, but with each other to stem feuds and rumors and to really counter the back and forth that can occur quickly when street gangs become embroiled in some type of dispute, argument, or matter of attempting to right what is viewed as a disrespect. Lastly, the challenges that we still have, though, while we see these reductions in violent crime, is gun-related crime. While robberies are down, and I reported robberies being down some 5.7%, and over 2019, down some 10%. When we look at the underlying instances of robberies, give me one moment. We see that robberies involving a firearm are up, compared to 2019, by 17%. So what we're seeing is that while violent crime is being reduced, the presence of firearms, the presence of guns in our community is still a very significant challenge, and is up, some 17% from 2019, despite the fact that overall robberies are down by nearly 6%. So those numbers are going in the wrong directions. Our strategies on the enforcement posture is to focus on gun toters, on trigger pullers. Where are the guns coming from? Who's providing them to individuals in the street? And then also prosecuting those that are arrested with a gun to ensure that there's a deterrence to carrying a gun in the streets of Los Angeles. So it's a whole community event to interrupt and disrupt violence, but also we need help in the area of having fewer guns in our streets.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, public comment. Madam Secretary, would you please announce the first speaker?
The first speaker, Patricia Mendoza.
Good morning, Mr. Chief Moore and commissioners, police officers, and the public. I'm going to need 3 minutes. Is that fine?
Absolutely.
I'm here today because I rented a room, and last week I called the police officers because I felt like I was in danger. I called 911. So they sent me Officer Escobar, I believe, from the Rampart. And to make the story short, I was going to request for a citizen's arrest. I had the lady that I rented the room with her 2 personal friends that just moved in. When I got home after 10:40 at night, they changed the locks to the apartment. They bullied me. They pushed me around. They tried to, they grabbed me from my wrist. I have rheumatism, arthritis, so it's like my bones are like glass. And when Officer Escobar showed up, he put me in a very embarrassing spot with these 3 women. They laughed at me. I noticed that Officer Escobar was asking me personal questions about my children and that he demanded for me to tell him when I'm going to leave. I chose not to talk to him because I didn't like his body language. I felt like I was dealing with the gang member that was going to be collecting rent from these businesses. Suddenly, I felt like a little girl, like I have this grown man that has me locked up in the room, like, with all due respect, like a child molester. I kept my mouth shut. He told me, Ms. Mendoza, it's time for you to go to bed and just go upstairs. We'll talk later. He goes, you have to leave and you're in danger. And I told him, yes, Officer Escobar, I know I am. I'm living with the sociopath and I know I have to leave. I did reminded him that I spoke to Detective Garcia, that he's somewhere in downtown that's in charge of anything that has to do with abuse with minors. But with all due respect, Officer Moore, I've been a victim of the Rampart Police Station for like 15 years. I have proven evidence. They are mean, evil, corrupt, and they're rotten apples. I apologize what I'm saying, but I was born and raised on Tempo and Baldry, and I've had the worst experiences. Now, I'm not going to be embarrassed to come and talk about everything what I've been through, and I do want to file that citizen's arrest. Officer Escobar told the lady and her friends, the lady that I rented the room, to change the locks the next day, to remove all my items from the apartment. They went and go dump my items and abandon my items in an address that I don't live. But they left, the lady that I rent the room, she left her cell phone in one of my bags, and there was another lady that helped them, I guess, with the car to give them a ride. She also left personal items with her name.
Okay, Ms. Mendoza, if you would talk with that gentleman right there, we will initiate an
Thank you.
investigation into that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on Zoom, we have Shanji.
Hello, good morning to the commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sean. I'm from the Diamond Club West Coast. I sit on the board and representing the Jewelry District. Speaking today on behalf of a request for a more real-time crime watch to help Central PD with downtown LA and just the excess crime and robberies that we deal with, on a day-to-day basis. I think CCTVs have been proven effective, and we'd like to somehow, whether it's privately or through the public, get more access to LAPD to have that access to assist and be able to hopefully, as well as deter crime from happening to begin with. So hopefully the city will put that into consideration for the next budget. I know Karen Bass is somewhat supporting this idea, so hopefully we can get that pushed through. Sorry for the lack of breath. I just finished working out, so forgive me for the speech. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
The next speaker, the Red Chief.
Thank you for calling me Red Chief Hunt. Michael Moore, I like what you're doing over at 77th with Tangerini. I like the CSP program. I think that's going to be valuable to the community. I'm concerned about the time response to all the calls. It's supposed to be 7 minutes, and we still at an hour. That's very important, things like that. Well, let's move forward to 2024. As of 2024, I'm calling for all officers, police officers, teachers, and firefighters to have a salary at $100,000, which is minimum wage now in LA. It's like $44,000. We need to get that done, and you guys need to get that process. It's expensive to live in LA and stuff like that. But moving on, like 2024, I'm requesting a personal service back there for the community, things like that. It's not an I thing, it's a we thing. We need to get that correct, get back to the grassroots of LAPD and things like that. I am the Red Chief Hunt. Mr. City Attorney, I need to meet the City Attorney again. We had that meeting quite back and things like that, so I want to move forward on that. But let's move forward and get things done and get the crime rate down, things like that. Go back to the grassroots of LAPD and stuff like that. I am the Red Chief Hunt. I'm calling for change for 2024. Thank you.
Next, we have Philip Tabby.
Good morning, all items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commission. Who caught the news yesterday? ABC 7 LA's Instagram reported at the LAPD Academy for a press conference, and a news photographer collapses and hit his head. My prayers go out to that person. I hope you're all right. Well, our sorry excuse of what we call our chief of police was in the middle of kissing up to Mayor Karen Bass, like he always does, and it appears he looks up at the man having a medical emergency, but he doesn't act and waits for Mayor Bass's leadership and support. Mike, when will you start displaying leadership and support? You have repeatedly stated under Mayor Bass's leadership and support, and I quote, that's probably because she signs your paycheck. You're trying to hold on to your job no matter what. But it's funny because you never complimented Garcetti that much. But you continue to display horrible behavior, like being drunk in public, like at Dodger Stadium, where you drunkenly stumble to your city car, or you get caught on camera stumbling drunk with the deputy city attorney for LAPD at a bar while a new recruit even approaches you. And commission, unfortunately, there's a rumor going around. About 10 people witnessed our chief of police at the company holiday party at the Bonaventure Hotel intoxicated, and he took a head dive of his own. I wonder if Mayor Bass would have rendered aid if she seen that. But, or would she have to think twice, since you're such an embarrassment to the office of chief of police? Your leadership is like the body worn situation. You ignore situations until they get worse, where you can't handle it. Now cases are being overturned in the body worn situation. You know, a recent news article reads, prosecutors drop charges in ghost gun case linked to the LAPD gang unit scandal. So now you're responsible for ghost guns remaining on the streets? Fire Chief Moore, fire Liz Rhodes. And to the officers and the command staff with the moral compass, hang in there. Things are going to get better. The people support you more than you know. God bless the LAPD. I yield the rest of my time.
The next speaker, Matios Kade.
My name is Matios Kidana with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. I think it's really interesting that y'all had a caller, Colin, who was passionate about real-time crime centers and CCTV, which is surprising. And, you know, that's kind of what I want to talk about. And, you know, it's been discussed in relation to this narrative around organized retail crime theft, which is a fictitious narrative, but it's an important entry point that elucidates kind of the true purpose of this department and a years-long relationship with corporations, retail corporations, that goes as far back as we know as 2007, when at the time Chief Bratton approached Target for a donation from to the Los Angeles Police Foundation for Palantir, a widely banned data aggregation surveillance system. And you know, we know in some time, at some point, Target also sponsored in some capacity a real-time analysis and critical response division or RACER division, and you know, that relationship has stuck through till 2020. I love bringing up the email exchanges between Chief Moore and Target, in which, you know, Target sent Moore a photo of hundreds of NYPD outside of Target in Brooklyn, and Moore replied, "Don't see us having this type of staffing ability, ellipses, smiley face." And he later added, "We couldn't muster the 200 cops that NYPD did, but the people we did put there stood tall." I think this highlights a friendly, a cozy, mutually beneficial relationship between these corporations and the LAPD. That's who they're in service to. We have more at their beck and call. But, you know, this fear-mongering, right, is really in service of an expansion of these programs. I think everyone here knows that real-time crime centers aren't going to solve an increase in retail crime. These aren't a new thing. These types of centers have existed. We've had CSOCs in the past. We've had racers, like I just talked about, fusion centers. And all these things haven't solved retail crime. They were never meant to. They have led to the death of Black and brown community members. The coalition in the past has sent a letter where we talked about how in 2016, LAPD killed 19 people. 13 people were killed between March and October. And 8 of these killings by LAPD were related to CSOCs. And, you know, when we're delegitimizing these claims about an increased organized crime or whatever, organized retail theft, it's not just hearsay. The National Retail Federation has come out and said that nearly half of their $94.5 billion in missing merchandise in 2021 was a result of organized theft. They've since then retracted that claim and said it was closer to 5%. You've had Walgreens financial chief James Cahoe admit that the company exaggerated these claims in the past. And then we just have to look at, you know, claims that Chief Moore makes about an increase in gun crime, right? Right now, he arbitrarily compared this year's numbers to 2019 for an increase. One might say that's because, you know, COVID happened in 2020, but why not 2021 and 2022? It's just to fearmonger. It's just to increase these surveillance capabilities.
Thank you.
Next, we have Steve Rogers.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
First, I'd like to offer condolences to the victim that was struck by the on-duty LAPD officer, Centra McKinley. All lives matter, and no matter what the circumstances were, it's a tragedy. Couple of things have been talked about today. Air Support Division is invaluable for officer safety and for citizen safety. Anyone that sees how sprawling Los Angeles is and with traffic issues and some areas which are difficult to access, air support are the eyes in the sky that can save lives, and it must be supported. So full support for Air Support Division. The CCTV issue, yes, CCTV is invaluable to solve crimes and at times to prevent crime. The only problem with that is that when we talk about theft and Part 1 crimes, which was mentioned, how many of those crimes are not reported? The only thing that you're able to track is reported crime. I can tell you for a fact that there is a mountain of unreported crime. And why is that? One, response time for LAPD officers for non-emergency calls is extremely high. Are people going to wait around to make a report? So that's one factor. The other factor is that many people believe it's futile. What is the point? There doesn't seem to be any consequence for crime, property crime, such as theft. That's a perception, whether it's right or wrong. You can make that own judgment yourselves. So what we need are consequences for crime. At this very meeting, how many times have we seen violations of 403 PC, disturbing a public meeting with a chief of police sitting there, a police commission sitting there, giving repeated warnings from the president, officers in the room, the sergeant at arms, and no arrest has been made? That breeds contempt for the law, because when you have laws that are not enforced and highly visible, then you have contempt for the law and for the rules. And that needs to be established. That's very basic and very fundamental, but it still isn't being done. So start with the basics. Communication. When you call a police division, good luck in getting anyone on the phone. It used to be that LAPD had all prefixes with 485 starting, 213, 485, and you would get someone who would answer the phone. That is a long time ago. Now you leave a message and wait for them to call you back. Does anybody see that as a problem? There's the insulation of the LAPD and, quite frankly, the local government against the public, okay? We need to have better communication, start with the website, list neighborhood watch meetings. It should not be community policing by invitation, but for all communities and all individuals that want to participate in making their community safer.
The next speaker is Zach Sherwin.
Sorry if I'm out of breath. I just finished working out. Commissioner Garcia, you said that it was, quote, great that there are 16% fewer homicides in the community this year. That was the extent of your characterization of that statistic. What adjective would you use to characterize the statistic that LAPD has killed 22 people this year? And before you answer, were you even to mention or acknowledge such a thing? I just can't help be struck by the contrast between that positive take towards the reduced rate of homicides in the city. It's great that there's 86% as many, and yet not even a syllable about the 22 people LAPD has killed this year. Would you say that things in the city are generally great? The extent of the assessment that we heard from you today. You're doing a great job on the commission. Commissioner Suthers, last week you told us in a tone that I would characterize as, I don't know, proud of yourself, that in January you would be holding a community meeting in the evening that would not be at LAPD HQ. And I just want to encourage you not to be too proud of yourself for doing the basic thing that you're supposed to be doing on this commission. Having meetings here is terrible. The officers that we interact with are so hostile. It's remarkable, given how much power and money they have on their side. The officers that are ringing this room and standing in the hallway outside, there's so much going for them. They've got all the resources on their side. But despite this all the advantages that they've got, they're still too fragile to not be threatened by people who are critical of them in a way that manifests as conducting themselves in a fashion that's surly at best and hostile at worst towards their critics. Coming to meetings here is gross, and it's really inconvenient. It's at a terrible time in a terrible place. And I think that if you were truly striving to fulfill your function of being the civilian's voice in police affairs, as this commission's website says you are, you'd go above and beyond. Agenda item 3G is an elliptical machine valued at $3,790, a donation of that item. I looked up Time Magazine's consumer guide to ellipticals, and their high-end elliptical machine costs $24.99. So that's a $1,300 discrepancy. So this must be a really fancy elliptical machine that's getting donated. And I looked up the person donating it, and as far as I can tell, he's a former LAPD detective. Does he get a tax write-off for donating that elliptical machine that costs $1,300 than the most expensive model listed on Time Magazine's recommendations? Whatever the case of this, whatever the facts of this petty situation are, all these tens of thousands of dollars of donations that just pass through as routine and non-controversial consent agenda items don't strike me as routine and non-controversial.
Thank you.
Next, we have Larry.
Thank you. This is Larry Hanna, Independent Counsel with the Los Angeles Police Protective League. I'd like to speak on all items. The first item I'd like to speak on is agenda item 4B. It has been the longstanding position of the Los Angeles Police Protective League that our members are protected 24 hours per day. And as such, they should be accorded all of the legal rights and protections, the same as if they were clocked into their respective shifts. When they're out there protecting the public or protecting themselves off duty, they deserve all of the protection. And it's about time that they do receive that protection. And we thank you for looking at that and hopefully ensuring that that is the case. The second item I'd like to just briefly talk about is the controller's release of the audit for the air support and the use of airships. The airships are one of the best tools that the officers have. They are out there and they can get there before the officers. They protect the officers when they're there, and they many times catch the really bad criminals that are out there. We need those airships. We need more of them. And this controller, you must keep in mind, is the controller that after 4 months can't get the police officers' paychecks correct. He's been trying. His office is in chaos. This report is good for one thing and one thing only, and that's to line the bottom of bird cages. So thank you.
The next speaker, Megan.
She's been thinking a lot about something that you said last week, Rasha. It was in response to the news that the LAPD had actually managed to solve a homicide. And you said, individuals think that they can prey on the vulnerable community because no one will care. And the department demonstrated that they do care about the lives of the unhoused. Yeah, I've just been like mulling for the last week whether the statement's just like wildly ignorant or cold-hearted and calculated. I've been wondering if you've ever talked to people living outside, if you've ever seen a sweep. Have you ever just talked to somebody who's been at a sweep that's not a city worker? Because I have. I've talked to a lot of people living outside. I've never met one who has positive things to say about the police. I've been to sweeps. I've witnessed police interacting with unhoused people many times. I've watched people beg them to be allowed to cross their yellow tape to collect their personal belongings, their family photos, their documents, their medicine. I've asked police for help finding services and housing for people that we're looking at in that moment. And I've been met with everything from shrugged shoulders to silence to total indifference. I've made runs to Big Five to replace tents and sleeping bags thrown away in the winter by police. In a city which admits it does not have enough shelter by far to house all of its homelessness, the police are only too happy to play lapdog for white property owners by displacing poor people and throwing away the only shelter that they have available to them. Your comment inspired me to do some research to find statistics to back up my anecdotal experiences. I also just came across a few direct quotes that I found in various articles. These are from unhoused people. The police down here are nothing nice. They're very cruel, they're very rude, and they're pistol happy. I've had a gun put to the back of my head, told me to get on the wall on my knees for no reason. Police bother me all the time. They take all my property. My medicine gets thrown away, and the next day I try to talk to somebody and nobody can find it. They're just coming for us every week, every day. We don't get no breaks. Trending upwards are police arrests of homeless people. 4118 arrests are rising, 558 arrests in 2021, 853 in 2022. And so far, through September 15th of this year, 1,582 arrests were made in this city. Do you know what else is trending upwards? As police violence towards unhoused people trends upwards, unhoused people dying. When I first started paying attention to it, it was 3 people a day. Now it's 6 people today. 6 people a day. Is that what you mean by quality through continuous improvement? Chief Moore? Thank you.
Next, we have Hamid Khan.
All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
So here we go again, the Community Safety Operations Center, CSOCs, in 2003, in which later on they would just open up these laser files where these secret files on individuals who are being harassed and intimidated and destroying lives, which because of community organizing was finally dismantled in 2019, and all Moore had to say was this was an experiment. Then the Real-Time Analysis and Critical Response Center, RACER, in 2005, which, if I'm reminded that in 2010, Mike Downing, the former deputy chief, speaking to a crowd at the Standard Hotel, holding his BlackBerry, boasted that I can see everything that moves in this city of 468 square miles. So welcome to mass surveillance. Then fusion centers, the local Norwalk Fusion Center called the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, JERI. So, and RACER got an update in technology. So now what we are looking at is the RTCCs, so the Real-Time Crime Center. And what are they going to be doing? Asking for another additional $1 million for the centers, $15.5 million in other parts of the budget. They're going to be using Fusus Enterprises plus package software program. And what is Fusus? That's a company based out of Georgia that created technology that allows private and public entities to fuse surveillance systems into one video feed that can view a network of potentially thousands of cameras. Well, Fusus was there, right there in Minneapolis when George Floyd was murdered. Obviously, Fusus doesn't pick up police violence. However, as Fusus was being used, it was used extensively by the Minneapolis Police Department to monitor protesters and rallies and marches all across the city as this was going on. So as we had said in our letter to the police commissioners back in about the data-driven policing, about the data-informed community policing handbook, that, as a result of CSOCs, they had a deadly effect in South Central Los Angeles due to the initial launch from March to October 2016. As Matios said, 19 people killed in 2016, 13 people were killed between March and October, and of these, 8 killings by LAPD were related to the laser program at the CSOC. So this is what it's going to be happening. Again, we dismantled predictive policing and behavior, and now we're back to it. This is what the real-time crime centers are going to do before claiming that before this crime can happen. So, just going back to it, more money, more of that going on, and more dragnet surveillance, more information gathering, more information sharing. On top of that, we are seeing right now, and it's very much in tandem, that how the House is right now, in Congress is looking at the FISA courts and Section 702 of mass surveillance as well. So here we go, rubber stamping, more money and more surveillance.
The next speaker, Jonathan Foster.
Jonathan Foster. I would like to pause for 4 seconds for Daryl Cunningham Shamley and George Sorianto. Now, last week I stumbled on my words. 218248 at 4747 gives me this one. So I'll be dealing with that next week. And it came with the words, "That seems unlike you," and Eric the Toilet, Eric Garcetti, and your $1 million deal. And I got one of those, so I'll deal with that next week. And the reason I came down here was to help out. And Don, the Trump was running for president, the border crossings dropped, so crime dropped in LA, and the LAPD was saying that it dropped crime, which isn't true. So in 29 AD, new topic, 29 AD, the red thread does not turn white when the Jews throw the scapegoat off the cliff. The red thread does not turn white since 29 AD. God is not at peace with the Jews. Now, here is Jessica Brown again.
Drop the pipe!
Less lethal. Less lethal. Should have been a net gun. And then he wouldn't have had to shoot her. If the less lethal was a net gun, he wouldn't have had to shoot her. And he maybe could have shot her one time. But I got a lot of things to say about these things. These are the preventables, right? They're preventable, right? So Jessica Brown, there's a horn in the area, more likely responding ambulance, and this did not help de-escalation. That horn, messed everything up. The less lethal shot could have been a net gun. However, the officer should have only shot one time. The approach could have been a little better, anticipating the scenario. You know what was going on, right? So many of these things went right, though, with the police response. Many things went correct with the police response. There were many correct, the good things. So the next time, so many things, went right with the police response. Just the most important actions were failures. It's a small margin of miscalculations that ended in Jessica Brown's death, or Takar Smith's death, or Keenan Anderson's death. There was a lot of things that went around it, but the most important actions ended in failure. All preventable, almost by small margins. Takar Smith seems to me like he was about to throw the knife. I'm not sure, but the officer didn't have a shield. Keenan Anderson, same thing. But they put the taser in the wrong place. But 8 officers were there.
Thank you.
8 of them. So it was preventable. That was a preventable thing.
Next, we have Jerome Bates.
I don't like that the police officers do get prosecuted for this stuff like that.
All items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
So this is actually Jason Reedy, but the only way I get called on when I virtually take part in these meetings is if I use a fake name and another email in order to speak. Now, I may have not attended the last 2 meetings in person, but I hope no one calls me Luke Calanche, as I've still attended more meetings than her this year. Musty Mike, you led today's Chiefs report with a propaganda event described as a youth dinner dialogue, and then proceeded to detail the protest against Genocide Joe last Friday. But your department felt like putting out a news release for a 19-year-old who stole some Tide and toothpaste and posted it up on your LAPD PIO Twitter account, but never felt the need to release a news release or publicly put out information when one of your pigs struck a pedestrian Friday night and killed them. In fact, that should have led your report, Michael, given your officer stole the life of someone. But hey, the LAPD has an unmatched reverence for human life, right? Also, this use of the term officer-involved collision, disgusting. Of course, it was a CSP officer, and that's why you're trying to bury this. Mentioning that the person who was killed was outside of a crosswalk before stating your serious concerns with the high rate of speed the pig was driving at is very telling. You should release any video of this ASAP. Now, Michael mentioned the impact that helicopters have and said that they have serious safety dividends and are a deterrent to crime. Is that why they show up after to assist your pigs on the ground when a supposed crime has been committed? I literally had a helicopter follow me back to my car nearly a mile away from a protest I was at 2 weeks back. Does that sound like a good use of helicopters? For Moore to say that he was disappointed in the controller's office and that they were unprofessional, releasing info that was counterproductive, but somehow you and this commission didn't address the 61% of your flights that are deemed non-high priority events, including 783 ceremonial flybys, including a Chile fly-in and a flyby for a golf tournament. So you also have the murder of Oscar Leon Sanchez on the agenda today. I want to remind this commission that only 199 days passed in between the murder of Oscar Leon Sanchez and Billy Stribling, both by killer cop Diego Bracamontes. Oscar's last words that were in Spanish were, "I'm not going to allow you to rob me." This is yet another case of your officers not having the patience to deal with Black and brown people, especially when they are in the midst of a mental health crisis. I'll remind you that Oscar wasn't given a warning before your officer stole his life. And instead of them getting someone who knew Spanish to talk with Oscar, they decided to murder him in his own home. This is the LAPD. Finally, I want to note that the two situations that Rasha mentioned, one of which was citing someone for spitting on a sidewalk, and the other was a pig threatening to call DCFS on a community member, me. These were acts committed by your senior lead officers. This is who the department has described as their up-close and personal embodiment of the LAPD and knowledgeable law enforcement officers. Yet it was slow Antonio Hernandez who cited a municipal code from another fucking city, and senior lead officer Elizabeth Southern, who said she was going to call DCFS on my family for saying, "Fuck you pigs."
The next speaker, Donald Harlan.
Hi, I'm Donald Harlan. I'd like to speak on several agenda items in the general comment. I was concerned about the mention of the Inside Safe program. That's not a legal program. They don't have money for placing people in housing under Inside Safe. There's no money in the government for them to spend to do that. They're trying to illegally spend one of my accounts. I would look at that very carefully. They're trying to develop a lot of real estate over it. Some of the things that came up, deleting records. I noticed that you guys don't go to any secrecy to try and hide whose records you're deleting. That you guys really shouldn't be deleting records. That there's a big problem that you guys, the people in the police commission, have attempted to cover crimes committed by you guys by deleting records in the past. I'm concerned about deals with politicians for immunity and pardons. That I just want to let you know that there's no pardon or loophole or anything for financial crimes or immunity for financial crimes for what you guys are doing. You'll never get that. Just so you guys know, you guys are definitely busted on that. It's come to my attention that several people here at the police commission were vendors at a site in Canyon Country where one of my family members was murdered. That the people here in the police commission were vendors at a murder scene, and that you guys have gone through quite a few lengths to cover up the problem. There's several. Are you going to be able to say, "Oh, my family member did that and I didn't do that"? But the crimes you committed trying to cover it up have been extensive. There's been a long list of crimes: negligence, theft, failure to disclose, false pretenses, forgery, entering false records, identity theft, alteration of state records, bringing stolen property in the state, embezzlement, diversion, conversion, invasion of privacy, nuisance, defamation, murder, graft, crimes against me, crimes against others, crimes against properties, crimes against the state, all in the attempt to cover up the fact that you guys were vendors at a murder scene for one of my relatives, for one of my family members. There's no memorandum.
Thank you.
Next, we have Debbie.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to speak on all items.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yes, we stand in support of our officers. Our officers, every minute of every day, demonstrate heroism and above and beyond kindness to the communities they serve. Look around at the officers currently protecting you in the room you are in. These officers continuously are over and beyond professional in the face of absolute adversity. We stand with our air support unit. Air support units are an invaluable tool to our officers and communities. City Controller and TikTok aficionado Kenneth Mejia has proven to be a non-credible source. It's abundantly clear given his inability to do his job when it comes to our officers' pay. Regarding item 4B, it has been the long-standing position of the Los Angeles Police Protective League that our members are police officers 24 hours a day, and as such, they should be accorded all of the legal rights and protections the same as if they are clocked into their respective shifts. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker, Akili.
Since you all already know my name, one of the things, the police report and public comment. I've lived through communism, terrorism, and gangs. And I know what it means when you refer to somebody. I knew what it meant when you refer to somebody as a communist. I know what it means when you refer to somebody as a terrorist. I know what it means when you refer to somebody as a gang member. And the reference itself can damage lives. I just heard the chief's report, and he made comments about gang-related without evidence, much like saying it's terror-related, or much like in my early involvement when I was called a communist. We need, and it wasn't challenged. We just accept that it was gang-related. And I'm asking you all to, if you are going to make those kind of statements, substantiate them. Prove them. Don't just say that, because I know what it means. I am 3/4 of a century, and I know what it means when people make reference that has no substance, because we have paid for that. Secondly, I want to talk about last week you all approved a budget that was given to you almost 4 days before. That is the classic example of bad management. If you want somebody not to find something, give it to them a few days before they got to make a decision on it. You know the budget process. It happens the same time every year. We are calling for, first of all, when the budget process starts, there ought to be public input into it. And we're calling for that. And then finally, you all need to get it at least 3 months before you got to decide on it. Anything less than that, then we're just saying rubber stamp this and pass it on. And you get, and that is something that happens too often. So one, we are calling for public comment on the budgeting process. The Black Lives Matters, we've started the people's budget, and we start our surveys at least a year out, and we're doing it now. You all can do the same thing, because these are public dollars that you are making decisions on. And the public ought to be involved in at least hearing about how their money is going to be spent. And one of the ways you can prove that, you can establish that, is by what the controller has done by demonstrating that the money that we are spending for helicopters the data doesn't necessarily support spending money on it. So we are calling for one, public involvement and participation in the budgeting process in the beginning. Two, at least for y'all to get it in some kind of timely manner. Thank you.
The next speaker, Shiana Wilson, or Sierra Wilson? Sierra?
Just in case, that's 75 years if you missed it. I said I was 3/4, that's 75 years.
All right, I'm going to be speaking on all matters. Sorry, okay. So I came here today to bring light to a situation of a huge citywide stalking incident against myself. I will try my best to have emotional intelligence. I've walked into several police stations and was told I wasn't under investigation, but still I'm followed everywhere I go by not only police officers, air support, drones, and a lot of paid residents of LA who don't even know me, but only follow in the guidance and laws of the toxicity someone has started. I've even tested this and traveled to different cities, and these same cars and plates has followed me. I have done nothing wrong. This has been going on for months. I had to send my children out of town for their safety, and they still do not understand why, which builds trauma. I have sick parents who don't understand why they can't get my attention and why I have to sit here and defend myself. I've tried to reason and talk with these individuals, and they hide while stalking me with their sunglasses and hats and tinted windows. If you are justified in what you're doing, then why are you hiding and covering your face? This is no doubt an illegal spiritual investigation, if you know what I'm saying. No justification in any way. I have made several reports to police stations and the FBI. Furthermore, I have several photos and videos as well as extensive logs backing up my claims. I have seen Asian groups of men meeting where I happen to be and the license plates of NBI following me. What do they want with me? Why all this for one female? This is how you know there is corruption and lies they are trying to cover up. I am asking that you help me get to the bottom of this because some of your police officers are corrupt. And I've served my country for 8 years. I do not deserve this. This especially when me myself have probably done more for this country than some of them. Hopefully, you will take me up on this offer. I'm done.
The next speaker is Salam Alam.
Hi, Chief Moore. I called you. I left a message. I tried to make appointments. I was denied access. I am the one who's pain in the neck. I'm the one who helped you. So, I'll read it to you. It's one of the law enforcement member who is a retired one who attacked my daughter, my only child. And then you protected each other. So I did ask you outside investigation, but I was crushed. You have so many citizens, so many employees, your own, who work really hard. Why do you let them down? Call outside agents to investigate LAPD. You screwed up. You have serious problem in LAPD. You messed up. Own up. That's why I came to you today. So here is what I wrote in 2014. I want this to be copied. I asked him, the officer in charge, he refused. So it's your responsibility to get it. As you all know, your job is nothing, will never be accomplished without working together with citizens. Isn't that true? We are your ears, your mouths, and everything. You let us down time after time. You put your department in danger by having bad cops. They're taking over. What do? Each one of you as a commissioners. Do the mentally ill needs to be hit, attacked? No, they don't. Do they deserve this? No, they don't. Because he's a retired officer, what did you guys do? There is no incidents to report. Then I'm a snitch, isn't it, for LAPD? What did they do? We're going to call mental health department. You are sleeping in the same cozy bed. No, I'm not mentally ill. You messed up. So here it is. I don't want to take your time, sir, or all of you. You put yourself in danger. You are putting yourself. That's why many are killed on the line of duty because of your negligence. You clean up the LAPD, the bad cops, 77 station. I'm not the problem. There is illegal activity going on. Clean up. And sex trafficking. I want this to be copied to each one of you. Own up.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, someone from the Inspector General's office will reach out to you in just a moment if you'll stay here, please. We'll have someone chat. Thank you.
And there are no other public comment cards, sir.
Thank you. We will now move on to item 3, consent agenda items. We have items today, A through H. Several of these require different actions, so I'm going to take them as they're grouped in the actions. Looking at item 3A, Department's report on fireworks buyback program funding. Are there any questions or comments on that item? Seeing none, I would move that we approve the department's report and transmit to the city council. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Items 3B, C, and D all are recommended for board action to approve the department's report and transmit concurrently to the mayor and city council. Are there any questions on items 3B, 3C, or 3D? Okay. Seeing none, I would move that we approve the department's report and transmit concurrently to the mayor and city council items 3B, C, and D. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Items 3E, F, G, and H, recommendation for board action. Approve the department's report and accept donations. Are there any questions or comments on items 3E, F, or G?
I have one question for, which one was it? The E, please.
Okay, we'll hold that one. Are there any comments or questions on items 3F or G? Seeing none, then I would move that we approve the department's report and accept donations for items 3F and 3G. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll go back to item 3E, department's report on the authority to destroy obsolete records, original official records for various areas and divisions. Vice President Shields, go ahead. And before we do that, I believe we need to call Administrator Asakan. She's on Zoom? Okay, great.
Great.
Hello, good morning. Elena Asukan, Commanding Officer of Records and Identification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my question is just, it should be simple. It indicates here that the records have satisfied all the minimum retention requirements and the requirements for destruction of obsolete records, both based on the department's records and administrative code. I just want to confirm that these are not subject to any kind of public records requests or anything of that nature and can be destroyed.
Correct, ma'am. All of these items meet all the, records retention schedule, and there's none on this list that are required to be kept indefinitely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on item 3E? Okay, seeing none, I would move that we approve the department's report and accept donations for item 3E. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3H is the Executive Director's report. Any questions or comments on the Executive Director's report relative to official police garage towing and storage rates? Okay, seeing none, I would move that we approve the Executive Director's report for item 3H. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And President Suthers, I just want to correct something with respect to number E. I don't believe there are any donations to accept for that matter, so it would just be approving the department's report.
Okay, noted. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 4, regular agenda items. Item 4A is the department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the implementation of the real-time crime centers, and I believe we have Deputy Chief McMahon. Morning, sir. And if you would just introduce everyone at the table, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, Commissioner. Deputy Chief John McMahon, CIO, Information Technology, and to my right. Good morning, Commissioners. The intention here today is to present to you the Department's intention to implement real-time crime centers to strengthen our response to crime. Over the past several months, we've gone out and done significant community outreach to try and assess the community's demand, and I'm here to report to you today that given the number of neighborhood watch meetings we've attended, participated in, delegated to neighborhood councils, city town halls, it seems to be an overwhelming support, if not a demand, for the implementation of this type of technology or mechanism to improve the department's response to crime. With that, what is a real-time crime center? And I think now would be a great opportunity to show you what a real-time crime center is as it was utilized in the city of Atlanta and the greater area of Atlanta.
Atlanta 911, operator 3041. What is the location of your emergency?
1110 West Peachtree Street on the
What's going
11th floor. We just heard a gunshot.
Inside the building?
Yes.
On the 11th floor?
Yes. 1110 West Peachtree Street.
Hold on one moment. Hold on. Don't hang up.
Unit, they're now advising the active shooter, person shot. 23-year-old female. Advising the front door is barricaded. They're advising female shot.
This map, it shows the distance from the initial shooting in Midtown to where residents in one community in Cobb County spotted the suspect. Then he was arrested. Cobb County's police chief says just 4 years ago, his department would not have had that state-of-the-art technology that helped them track down active shooter suspect Deion Patterson.
Cobb police gave us a behind-the-scenes look at the real-time crime center, where all of the technology came together, including DOT cameras that led to suspect Patterson.
Flock LPR, Fusus Real-Time Crime Center, the DOT cameras, and the CAD integration. Those four things were very instrumental.
The chief praised the new technology of the Flock license plate recognition camera that located the exact white Toyota Tacoma pickup truck that Patterson allegedly fled to Cobb County in.
When I can get an actual photograph from the Atlanta Police Department of the car with a tag number and a photograph of an individual who shot 5 people, guess what? I detain 1. I don't pull over every white Tacoma that I see.
The chief says it was a plainclothes officer who confronted the armed suspect near the pool house in the Shady complex.
Officers can now get information in real time, giving them a heads up of what they can expect when they pull up to a crime scene.
This new system will be able to integrate any type of camera, whether it's a high-tech system at a business or your doorbell cam. Plus, officers will be able to pull up real-time video on their laptops or their phones on the way to a call. Atlanta Police Chief Rodney Bryant says new technology connects all cameras of any type throughout the city and allows law enforcement to access footage in real time from any nearby camera when responding to calls.
Gives us the proactive ability to immediately see the cameras related to the calls as they come in.
When it comes to solving crimes, officers will spend less time searching for video evidence.
What would have taken going out and knocking on doors and requesting that kind of video can be done within seconds.
So it's telling our investigators there are videos in this area, and these are the homes that you need to go and check that are willing to share that information.
These stories are hard proof that fighting and preventing crime in the 21st century requires a 21st century approach. My message to all listening is this: your participation is truly invaluable in aiding our police, our firefighters, and first responders to rapidly respond to criminal activity and emergency situations.
This real-time crime center will give us the ability to be much more proactive in addressing crime.
Atlanta 911 operator. Atlanta 911 operator 3041. What is the emergency? Location of your emergency.
1110 West Peachtree Street.
So as she tries to work out that slide, I just want to report that we've had the opportunity to visit a number of different cities that have employed real-time crime centers. Each and every one of them, and many of them, the larger police departments throughout the country, have enjoyed a great deal of success in the implementation of this type of technology, which primarily leverages video technology, puts that information where it matters most, and that's out to the very edge. And what I mean by the edge, that's to the officers that are responding to the call. Right now, I think this commission is well aware that we have about 8,000 Apple iPhones out in the hands of our officers, and that tool provides us the ability to push that type of information to the officers who need it most. Utilization of a real-time crime center is kind of a broker in between that, so officers don't get so distracted looking at their phones and help to navigate some of the information that's going on. What I'm not able to present to you right now, and hope we get it up soon, is a lot of the major cities that we have visited that has enjoyed this success. And what was a common denominator in each one of those cities, and we heard some of it today, is while every initial implementation had some of its initial resistors, your privacy advocates that initially voices concerns over accountability and transparency, every city says they were able to overcome some of those concerns, and through strong governance and excellent accountability, they enjoy a widespread support from their communities by employing this technology. There's the slide that I was referring to earlier. And then if you don't mind, some of the more complicated details, I'm going to turn over to Captain Anthony Espinoza, who has prepared some remarks to kind of get into the details of what also a real-time crime center does.
Thank you. We in Los Angeles are blessed that our city has not experienced the horrors of a mass shooting, yet the sobering reality is that in today's world, that threat looms over every community. Recognizing and preparing for that possibility is among the very highest priorities for the LAPD and for law enforcement agencies across the country. The integration of real-time video captured on private cameras together with other data sources can make a significant difference in active shooter incidents. Live video feeds shared with police personnel in the field can enable officers to respond more quickly and effectively. Police can view the unfolding events in real time, thus allowing for quick and accurate assessments of the threat and facilitating a highly focused, well-coordinated rapid response. Video technologies form the cornerstone of real-time crime centers, an approach implemented by many law enforcement agencies nationwide to prevent crime. By accessing real-time video feeds, police can gather valuable visual intelligence to disrupt, disable, and defeat countless crimes against people and property. As incidents occur, precise information such as the number of suspects, their physical descriptions, their movements, potential weapons, and other key data enable police to make informed decisions about tactics, including determining the appropriate entry points, identifying escape routes, and deploying resources most efficiently. Real-time video integrations allows for remote guidance and support from police experts to our officers. With limited number of boots on the ground and a lot of ground to cover in the city of Los Angeles, real-time crime centers provide a significant force multiplier, deploying resources quickly and efficiently. The optimized situational awareness and improved tactical decision-making that arises in real-time crime centers improves both outcomes and community trust. Police won't stop 5 different cars that match the general description. Video technology with license plate readers adds another layer of highly accurate data points so police make one detention of the right person, and with that, avoid detaining the wrong person or persons. Video technology generates crucial evidence in criminal investigations and court proceedings. It provides a clear visual representation of events that can be used to corroborate witness testimonies or accurately identify suspects. This strengthens the justice system by reducing reliance on subjective interpretations and enhancing the accuracy of legal outcomes. No doubt that leveraging technology comes with the obligation to use it responsibly. It is important to recognize the benefits of real-time video integrations alongside the continuing requirement to respect privacy laws and considerations. Law enforcement personnel can only access video from privately owned cameras when the access has been granted by the camera owners. Should a recording become evidence of a crime, strong governance ensures that sensitive video data is appropriately handled and stored. It should also be noted that video technologies hold officers accountable for their actions while on duty, a significant benefit of cameras worn by officers and in their patrol vehicles. On those infrequent occasions when an officer's body camera or digital in-car video may not have deployed, video captured on other cameras provides an unbiased record of events, ensuring transparency in police-citizen interactions. Prominent positioning of cameras and notices of video recordings have been shown to deter criminal activity. When that video technology is shared with police via real-time crime centers and integrated with other law enforcement data, the deterrent is powerful. And powerful deterrents are what we need to remove the dubious distinction recently bestowed upon Los Angeles by the National Retail Federation as the #1 city in the United States in organized retail theft. Some describe real-time crime centers as a modern-day neighborhood and business watch. Whatever the label, video technology and real-time crime centers are valuable, viable, and need to improve the safety of the livelihoods of our community.
All right, ma'am, next slide, please. So, although we visited more cities than this, here's 5 of the cities that we did visit with different aspects of features that they have in terms of real-time crime centers. That first row is automated license plate readers. You can see that all 5 of those cities employ that. That's a significant piece to a real-time crime center. But what is the added feature is CAD integration, and that's the ability for a private business or a residence who has particular video, if they were to call 911, that CAD integration alerts the 911 operators that it is a real-time crime center location, and they're able to notify the real-time crime center, and they immediately dial into the neighborhood and cameras feeds. In cases where and let me back up 1 second. Different cities have different implementations of real-time crime centers. A robust real-time crime center involves the use of city and government cameras and complements that with private businesses and residential community cameras. We've seen variations where some cities have primarily just business and residential cameras, other cities that primarily rely on strictly government cameras. Beverly Hills, for example, although they're looking to expand to residents and businesses, right now currently have 2,500 cameras within the city of Beverly Hills. And I think every commissioner here on this board is well aware of what happened this past weekend and how that technology was able to take a murderer off the streets and prevent that individual from killing again. So that particular case in Beverly Hills, strictly government cameras, but here you can see other elements. All of them pretty much use closed-circuit televisions. And then lastly, and we're not, the city of Los Angeles is not heading towards this direction just yet in the gunshot detection. Here's where you take audio sensors that detect gunshots. And in the past, it was pretty much, it says ShotSpotter is a known vendor, and prior to video, there was really no spotting about it. It was an audio alert used in other cities that would alert somebody to a very distinctive audible sound that alerts law enforcement it's a gunshot. But layered with video technology, it's been a game changer in a lot of cities where that gunshot detection goes off, and then you have video on top of it that actually captures the individual that's committing the shooting, and that also with layered ALPR gives you a very good lead on who's committing that shooting and puts information in the officer's hands to quickly and effectively go and stop that person from committing further shootings. A breakdown of those 5 cities and some of the notes that we've taken in those trips is the city of Glendale, Arizona, very small city, 1,700 plus cameras that they use, primarily government city-owned cameras or the police department. Atlanta has a balance of both. 17,000 registered cameras and 16,000 integrated cameras. I'll get in the distinction between registered and integrated cameras in just a little bit. Cobb County, as you just saw in that video, 1,600 registered cameras, 9,000 integrated cameras. The city of Detroit, a program that we were very fond of, has 4,338 cameras. City of New York, 64,000, as I just mentioned, Beverly Hills with 2,500 city-owned cameras, and they're looking to expand to businesses and residences. Real-time crime centers, really, as Captain Espinosa has illustrated, it really gives us the opportunity to interrupt and disable crimes in its early stages. It, in a different way, gives us the technology to cut down the number of stops based on reasonable suspicion. Quite often, we report to this commission the number of stops that officers make, and it's often been a subject of skepticism and criticism, the number of disproportionate stops from people based on color. Well, this technology will help us get away from making stops based on reasonable suspicion and put tools in our hands to start making stops based on probable cause to arrest. And that's been, I think, eloquently illustrated by that Cobb County police chief when they had that particular active shooter suspect that was described as a male black and a white Toyota Tacoma, and they got that particular license plate. Those officers stopped that one Toyota Tacoma. They didn't, like he said, he didn't stop 5 of them. Cutting down on the number of stops where officers are telling the community, you fit the description, and that's the reason why they stopped them. And although legal and although proper, and they probably had every element of reasonable suspicion to stop that person, that stop, if it's not the right person, is a broken encounter. It damages relationships, and it's a relationship that now, no matter how hard the department works to rebuild that, it's a damaged relationship. And cutting down on those stops, those incorrect stops, because somebody merely fits the description, is technology, a tool that law enforcement can use to really cut down on those numbers of damaged relationships. This next slide, ma'am. Deter criminal activity, interrupt and disable crimes in the early stages, thwart high rate crimes, repeat offenders, advance ongoing investigations, and clear more arrests. This is what a real-time crime center will do with our effectiveness as we deploy it. Next slide. Here's essentially how it works with the private community aspect of things. We will only participate with people who want to participate in the program. If a member of the business community wants to participate, an agreement is arranged. We make arrangements for installation and provision to make sure that technical specifications are appropriate, and we'll work with CAD integration in the police department. And that gives us the ability to access an incident at the time of the incident, once they give us consent to access that video. And then the only time we would ever take video from these establishments is if it results in the evidence of a crime. Oftentimes we'll get asked, well, how long does the police department keep the video data? We don't keep it. It's kept by the persons that's registered with this program. It's their data. The only time we ever get it is when it becomes evidence of a crime. The only time we look at it is when they give us consent to look at it because they've dialed 911, they need a law enforcement response. Next slide. So there are 2 types of cameras, as I mentioned. There's the integrated camera and the registered camera. The integrated camera is the type of camera through that consent that that is integrated with the department's 911 computer-aided dispatch. Somebody with an integrated camera calls 911. When that call comes into 911, it's automatically registered through the CAD. That is, for lack of a better term, a real-time crime center location or locations that has cameras that they've participated in. So with that alert, it goes to the real-time crime center, and people that will be staffed at the real-time crime center are able to dial into those surrounding cameras with consent and are able to see video feeds real live about that crime that is being active and that's active and in progress. And if it's over, and oftentimes an escape route that maybe pick up what the suspect specifically looks like, the type and color of his car, and the license plate perhaps that the suspect is fleeing in. That information is provided in real time to the responding officers. As Captain Espinosa mentioned in his comments, that type of information put in the officer's hands gives them the type of information they need in real time to be absolutely effective. Ultimately, we believe, and with a great deal of confidence, that the implementation of this type of technology will lead to greater arrests and more clearance rates and an improved quality of life in the city of Los Angeles. Next slide, please. The other type of aspect, and you heard one of the chiefs within the Atlanta Police Department. Currently today, If there's a particular crime and there's video evidence, oftentimes we don't get that evidence in nowhere near close to real time. Sometimes it's 24 hours, 48 hours, sometimes well into next week when detectives will go out as a follow-up, canvass the area, look up at the different roofs and ceilings of the buildings to see which locations have cameras, and then if they're open, try to establish and make contact with the business owners, and if they're able to get that type of video evidence, oftentimes that video evidence has the wrong Kodak or it's in a complicated format. If anybody knows anything about video, you almost have to have prior to this technology, you almost have the type of accompanying video player with the video in order to make the video viewable without going to a forensics review of it and converting it. It's very difficult to manage video. This helps us navigate that, and without detectives and exhaustive resource hours going out to those scenes, they're able to see which cameras are registered in the location, make a notification to those camera owners, and get the cameras back, get the video footage back immediately. Next slide. So here's the breakdown of the two sides and how it works. I've explained this already. This is just a diagram of where the information goes, the breakdown between the government side and the community side. Right now, the department is currently intends to, with continued support, roll out a real-time crime center in a number of different phases. Phase one is with the communities that have communicated to us that they want it or demand it, and because of our outreach, we've identified 3 particular divisions where we intend to pilot it based on their demands. So we would like to start in Central Division, Hollywood Division, and Van Nuys Division. Those were 3 divisions that were very compelling in their support of wanting to use this technology. So the cameras right now in phase one will be just a community-based approach. Later on down, we intend to work with the greater city family and leveraging camera technology and utilizing, with help of the other city departments, Bureau of Street Lighting and Department of Transportation, to pick up the other government aspect of things. But right now, our initial phase is to pilot it in those 3 divisions and focus just on the business, residential, and community side of things. Next slide. I mentioned there's a great deal of community interest and support. I'm convinced this interest will soon develop into a rather robust community demand, a demand that initially that I'm concerned that without proper resourcing, support, and staffing may become a bit overwhelming for the department in the beginning, but in the end, I'm convinced that we will be able to get this in the areas of the communities that want it, and ultimately they will be better served as a result of it. With our dwindling numbers of recruitment and retention, the use of real-time crime centers is an incredible force multiplier. I would strongly urge the commission and the rest of the city to continue or to express support for leveraging this type of technology. We're the nation's 2nd largest city. We've got the World Cup coming up. We've got the Olympics not too far down the horizon, and we would be one of the few major metropolitan cities in Los Angeles not to have this technology. I would hate to see an active shooter or the serial murderer we saw just this past week reoccur again without having this technology available to us. And with that said, I'll open it up to any questions.
Chief, thank you very much. Captain, thank you. I'll go ahead and open up questions or comments first to Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm curious how many other city family cameras are out there that we would use or could use.
In New York City? Did I hear that right?
In LA.
Well, right now there's about 700 analog cameras that are employed by the Department of Transportation. The police department has no visibility into those cameras, or extremely limited visibility, like 1 or 2 at the Emergency Operations Center, and it's just a live feed that really is used for traffic monitoring and doesn't offer more capability other than that.
Outside of transportation, what other cameras do we think?
Bureau of Street Lighting also employs cameras for their use. In order for this to be completely successful, what we've realized is that the cities that primarily are employing business and residential cameras are looking to a greater city implementation, and the cities that have primarily city government cameras are looking to expand to the private side of things. A successful real-time crime center employs both the city cameras that are only used for public view, where there's no expectation of privacy, and the intersections, things of that nature, and then the private cameras where they register and give consent to the police department inside a particular location, that if they're a victim of a particular crime, they give the police department consent to view that video, and then we only retain the video, as I said, if it turns out to be an evidence of a crime.
Got it. So in one of the slides, you had the image of an operator or someone calling 911 and the operator getting that footage to officers in real time. How would that happen? Does the operator automatically know something's available or a camera's available? So one in a residence, and then what happens when you're on a cell phone just out in the community?
Yeah.
So with LAPD dispatch, what will happen is you have a CAD incident that's created, and then the real-time crime centers at the geographic areas, the person that's sitting there will be able to hit that CAD incident number. It'll display a map in that area of that call for service. Within that map, it'll show symbols of cameras. The operator will then click on that camera image, and it'll zero into that location. They can rewind to try to look for when the crime or the incident started, and then fast forward as needed back to real time to try to find out who that individual is, what they're wearing, what they're driving. The great part about that technology as well is you can freeze that moment, and then by freezing that moment, you can actually send that picture to the officers out in the field so that they're getting situational awareness of who that person is, what kind of vehicle they're driving while they're responding to that location.
It's one thing for the person at communications to describe to officers what a particular individual looks like. For example, somebody wearing a blue suit, blue shirt and tie with a very cleanly shaved mustache and goatee and his hair slicked back. We all kind of have every single one of us will form a different image of what that person looks like. And officers may or may not get the right person, if that right person is even there, based on that limited description. It's just human nature. There is no substitute for being able to look at live footage or a photograph of what the actual person looks like. That helps us stop the right person and prevents us from stopping the wrong person.
Thank you. Last question, timeline for trying to implement this?
It's difficult. I think as we continue to garner support and we start in the 3 pilot areas, I think that will give us a better gauge on what it's going to take to roll this out department-wide. We're going to learn a lot in those initial phases of the rollout.
It's Commissioner, there's actually the time frame on this is in 2024. This is the idea, is in the coming months establishing the 3 real-time crime centers. This is supported by a organized retail theft grant monies that were provided that allows us to implement segments of this with some department provided or funded license plate readers, but there's also a separate component, which is we have a number of, as Chief McMahon indicated, a number of community groups that are wanting to sign onto an agreement where they would provide their video feeds from their own primarily commercial establishments to the department so that we would be alerted of the existence of those when officers are responding. The initial phase is just to be aware that they're there so we can collect that data. But as Chief indicates, the desire is, as other cities have, is to be able to stream that information so that officers upon arrival are aware. There's also, as we know, people when they call 911, people think the suspect is there now. Oftentimes it's 2 to 3 to 4 minutes for an officer for a 911 caller to actually be notified by the time the individual, collects themselves, reaches through there. So the aspect of if we can shorten that delay by ensuring officers have access to that video, then as officers are responding, they can, even if it's 2 or 3 minutes after the initial event, they can start looking for data to understand what suspect's appearance, vehicle, other information that can help them solve that crime. So what Chief McMahon and Captain Espinoza are talking about is an eventual real-time crime center ability. We're going to have to start this in segments, establish the centers, provide the training, establish the network of cameras. We know that there's tens of thousands of cameras out there now that our investigators learn about in the aftermath of a burglary or robbery or other things. This effort is to make that more systematic, and so that we don't have as many gaps as we have today with officers having to go out and canvass for video when in fact it's readily available. That's where Atlanta, Detroit, Operation Greenlight, and others have paved a path for us to quickly follow.
Yeah, money is one aspect, but resource and proper staffing, it's going to take both those elements to get this thing done in the timeline that we want to do. It's very, very, very critical. The demands will be there, and we'll certainly do everything we can to be up to that challenge. One of the things that just brought to my mind is I'm a member of the National Real-Time Crime Centers Association, and the president really loves to share this anecdotal story about the power of real-time crime centers. And he shared a story about an exercise that was done with a multi-government agency response to an active school shooting. And ultimately, he and their real-time crime center capabilities were invited to participate in this exercise. A great deal of planning went into it, lots of resources, well drawn out exercises that were going to go well into the evening to really tax the multi-level government agencies. And he kind of discouraged them. Well, I don't know if you really want the real-time crime center to participate in this. And like, well, as he's telling the story, we're like, well, wondering why. Well, with this technology, they launched the exercise, and within the first 20 minutes, they were able to identify where that active shooter was, where he went, the particular room he was that he hidden himself behind, and the exercise was over immediately. So everybody had all that planning, all those resources, all the equipment that was brought to bear for this particular exercise was over within 20 minutes because of this technology. I think it was an excellent example of when you use video technology with other sensor type technologies and with what it does for coordination and communication, really how effective that emergency response can be if you're using technology that exists today.
Thank you. Vice President Shields.
Thank you, and thank you for that great presentation. I am very much in favor of smart policing and leveraging technology to, as you said, not only save countless hours of police work, but also potentially reduce the number of stops for the wrong individual, which I do think can help strengthen the community relationship with the LAPD. My largest concern here, though, is how to make sure this does not turn into a slippery slope of surveillance for the sake of surveillance, such as, following a community member after they're leaving a demonstration, or following a community member that's just leaving a house of worship, and the targeting of individuals when there is no crime committed as a way of being very, very proactive, but can damage the perception by community members that already feel as though they are over surveilled. So how is the department going to kind of address those concerns, which I think are legitimate concerns being raised by privacy advocates?
Yeah, very, very much so. Strong governance, accountability, transparency. I think everybody is well aware of our ALPR policy. That is, I think, one of the strictest and most robust technology policies and that type of technology in the nation. But the beautiful thing about technology is that it provides a mechanisms for us to be able to track and hold people accountable. Every time an officer was to ever access that camera, every keystroke, every movement, those are things that are tracked by rather robust audit trails. So we will always have the ability to go back and make sure officers have the right to know and the need to know, and go back and inspect to make sure that they're not engaging in that type of activity.
Excellent. And Chief, is there already a policy in place relating to the use of this, or is that something that will be in the works to ensure it's not misused?
Well, as you, the public should be aware that surveillance of demonstrations, protests, and so forth, protected First Amendment activities are not allowed, other than for the matter of suspected acts of violence or criminality. So individual being followed away from a protest, for instance, would not be an appropriate today gesture. We do have, so there are guidelines in place now for the surveillance in public places that we use primarily within the Major Crimes Division. But I do think that what Chief McMahon and the establishment of the of smart cities and this real-time crime centers is that it'll benefit by having more explicit conversations about the activities specific to that center. That goes to the activities of the operator. You know, what area, you know, what are you looking at? Why are you looking at it? And how are we retaining and tracking those actions? And the benefit we have also is that this is well-traveled ground by other major cities across America, and we can take the best of the best when it comes to the best practices of governance. The department, absolutely, we're walking into this, and Chief McMahon's caution about the speed of this is that the demands of it, we need to have appropriate governance, we need to have appropriate vigors in the sense of training and personnel assigned, so that we don't have, as you say, you know, the runaway, the slippery slope, where now we're meddling into people's private lives and their personal activities without a clear nexus to an underlying criminal investigation.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanche.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. I have a few questions. Well, my first question, I think it was answered. I was trying to figure out like why you were making the presentation. So now I understand we're going to have some pilots. And with that said, I also just I had a question about funding. So all of the funding for these pilots is covered, or will we need additional funds? I was curious about the staffing for these pilots, cost per pilot. So if any information around that would be great. So I'll let you answer that, and then I have a couple of others that are a little bit different.
Yeah, so as we begin to roll this out in the pilots, costing initially is going to be brought to scale. So we've got, you know, the funding that's been that we believe is going to be made available through the organized retail theft grant. We've also asked for some seed money from the city in terms of budget. But depending on the level of funding we have, will dictate the scale and magnitude in which we end up employing a real-time crime center. If we get not a drop more, then your real-time crime center, you know, is in its most minimal function, and I do mean minimal, requires nothing more than perhaps 1 or 2 staff people with a radio and a computer to monitor the platform of where the cameras are.
And this would be like a citywide.
Yeah, the idea ultimately is, because the city of Los Angeles is so huge, so many cities, they have their real-time crime center in one central location. Although that could be done here in Los Angeles, we think the best distribution is to be in each one of the 21 geographic areas where they have a dedicated real-time crime center that will be integrated with the watch commander's office, and so that communication exists between those two entities to give the officers in the street the information they need. Now, keep in mind, as this thing continues to grow and get better, I'd mentioned the fact that we've got thousands of Apple iPhones in the hands of our officers. Ultimately, this technology and capability goes to where it really needs to be, and those officers that are responding, they can see it on the phone. However, that does not mitigate the need to have that that person in the middle, the real-time crime center, because we don't want the responding officers to be locked down just looking at video. They need that intermediary to give them all the information possible, because it won't just be limited to video technology. There's ALPR reads. As this continues to go on, we get closer to the Olympics. There's an element where perhaps nuclear and biological sensors can be fed into this, that if there's any type of an alert or threat we can be able to see that on a real-time crime center. So the possibilities are endless when it comes to funding or budget. It will ultimately be determined by the level of scale. I think there will be a desire, once this gets going, to continue to grow and invest in it as we move forward.
Got it. I have a couple of questions, so thank you for that. A couple of questions about or around some of the cities that you visited. Did any of those cities face any like Fourth Amendment issues or any type of like lawsuits? I'm just curious.
I'm not aware of lawsuits, but all the cities that we visited, especially the major metropolitan cities, they all have their chapters of the ACLU. They all have their groups that are very focused on privacy, the privacy advocates. And all of them said that they did have initial resistance, but through communication, transparency, and reporting, they were able to overcome those things. Every single city that we visited, enjoy widespread support.
Okay. If they do, would you let us know? I think it's really important for us to know,
of course,
what those cities, since they're ahead of us.
Yeah, none of them have reported any lawsuits.
Okay. Great. And additionally, would the 700 analog cameras that you discussed that the city has, that's just one department, would those be integrated in these pilots and all city cameras? So the goal is to have everything integrated in these pilot real-time crime centers?
Great question. It's my opinion that for the city of Los Angeles to get the type of real-time crime center capability that it desperately needs for the nation's second largest city, that we work together as a city family and take advantage of those abilities to leverage the Department of Transportation, leverage the Bureau of Street Lighting, so that we all work together and have the ability to get those feeds.
So that's something that you're going to work on through these pilots.
If ultimately, and the police department is not necessarily looking to own that camera data, if it's best intended that the camera data resides with the Bureau of Street Lighting and resides with the Department of Transportation, that's fine. We only need it when it's needed. And that's, it provides evidence of a crime, and we're able to look at it, and the only time we would ever take it or keep it is if it becomes evidence of a crime. If the city side of that model, if that's what this ends up becoming, and that still hasn't been determined yet.
And Commissioner, one of the important elements of this is that what Chief McMahon is giving is an enterprise-wide look. This is where we're going over a period of stages. One of the primary issues, of course, is physically getting the location, physically getting the equipment, tying in to Fusus or some integrator, the ability to start taking disparate images and information and beginning to make sense of it, correlate it so that an officer or a civilian can look at this and begin feeding valuable information to the officers. So that's going to grow over time, and it's not going to happen overnight. But their destination that we're heading to is picking up more and more feeds from what the public would automatically expect us to already have, meaning that they see cameras in public places, at intersections and so forth. It's like, I can't tell you how many people have had a hit-and-run accident at an intersection right outside here and believe that the department has the ability to pull that information and identify the vehicle. We don't. That camera is a passive camera. It's only active, and it's not recorded. And yet the public looks at that with great, disinterest or frustration, because the privacy opponents believe that we are capturing it, and they dislike that, and their perception of the department is that we're overly intrusive because we're monitoring it. The other part of the public says, well, why aren't you doing that? And you should be doing that. So this is an engagement, again, to come back at a localized level. The department put RACER in place back 20 years ago. The entire centers, our Department Operations Center today, but it took on too much. It took on 465 square miles, 21 areas. And so it couldn't look at what's happening in Van Nuys at the same time what's happening in downtown LA and what's happening, say, on Hollywood Boulevard. We know that by learning from our peers that other cities have tried it at a much smaller scale, at a localized level, and that's where agencies such as Beverly Hills and others are seeing such great success. And to draw this in, as a recollection, just last week, a man who was suspected of murdering 4 individuals, his vehicle, as it came into Beverly Hills in a nondescript manner, the license plate had been entered into the stolen vehicle system, but he had moved about the city and the county undetected until a license plate reader caught that vehicle, alerted a real-time crime center officer, who then put a device in place to direct officers into where that vehicle was. And that vehicle was stopped and a murder suspect was removed from the field. We do not have that capability here today. Should an active shooter or an attack occur at major shopping centers or other soft locations, our ability to grab real-time information is dependent upon our resources going on board. Now, airship, patrol units, certainly those aspects do exist today. This is the next generation forward.
Do we know, this is really interesting, so I have all these questions. Do we know what, say, New York or Atlanta, what their budget is for? Yeah.
Yeah, so I just asked that conversation to my colleague from New York. I don't have Atlanta's, but New York has spent, get ready for this, $300 million on their real-time crime center.
300 million per year?
300 million.
Per year? Or to create it?
To create it.
Okay. And then, do you know the cost to maintain it?
I don't.
Okay. This is just interesting questions. And lastly, do you foresee that these, since they're localized in each division, do you foresee that a civilian can monitor these cameras?
I do.
Okay.
I do. That there's a class of employee that exists within the city. That's you've got the PSR, and I'm not real familiar with it, and perhaps we can do a follow-up. But there's a class of employee that is a trainer for a PSR or a different class. This class might be perfect for that role, but I think ultimately it can be a civilian employee with proper training and recognition of how to utilize the system and communicate through the jargon and dialect of the police radio.
Great. So, Chief, you hope to get these first pilots, off the ground maybe in the first quarter, or
first and second quarter of 24 is the glide path on this. We want to identify the 3 areas. We want to formulate a means in which interested business owners and those that are interested in being a part of this want to sign up and can provide information so that we can begin to collect those sources. And so it's going to take a little bit of time. But we want to signal that we're also not going to be in areas in which communities have apprehensions about this. Let's be clear. We certainly believe that and over time, the vast majority of Angelenos will look to be a part of this relationship. But we also recognize that there are others that have apprehensions because they feel that there's surveillance or there's too much going on of this already. So we're going to start where the appetite is the greatest, and then we'll grow from there.
Okay. One more question. Just to clarify, so the information that a potential employee of our department would look at this data is post-incident, not no type of prevention. It's like when something happens, we will look at whatever's been given to us or whatever's available, but we would never use this as a tool to, I hate to say surveil, but to do prevention or anything like that, right?
No, in that case there, that information would be captured as evidence of a crime, and there's plenty of mechanisms in place to ensure that that doesn't occur. In the event it does occur, we've got a rather strong disciplinary system to deal with that type of misconduct.
But the only impetus for looking at the video is like if something happens.
Well, no, but let me clarify.
Okay.
6th Street Bridge today has cameras on it.
Okay.
And we ask our watch commanders, who are not a real-time crime center, but we expect that on Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, you know, on periods in time in which we see street racers that'll come, is that to take an occasional look at that and monitor for activities that I have described.
Okay.
So there is in public places. Now this is,
Okay.
we're not going to go to activate, there are a number of corporate businesses that have security systems that are actually integrated within their corporate warehouse, if you will. They're in other arrangements across other cities across the country, they have partnered with the local public agencies to say, we'll give you our feeds. But what we'll not do, nor do we have the time to, is go look at those markets and start just seeing who's in line for the fast food stand or who's at the department store walking around. What it's reactionary in the sense of, should there be a flash robbery, now that's where we want to go to that, so we can capture vehicle descriptions, suspect descriptions in more real time. But but in public places, there is a difference. In fact, one of the clarities we have to have with our with Westfield and other major markets is, you can give us access to your cameras, but we're not going to be able to watch them. We don't have the resources to just passively watch your active surveillance of these areas. We expect you to do that.
Yeah.
And I would add that an example of proactively using the cameras without a call for service would be something along the lines of like human trafficking. It's 24 hours, 7 days a week in public spaces. In communities that have those tracks where these girls are sold out there, expect us to be out there 24/7. And with as small as our vice units are, being able to utilize those cameras to see the time of day that they're out there, day of the week, they can actually shift their resources to be out there to rescue these young ladies and young men to get them off the street. So that's an example of proactively using those cameras even without a call for service.
But important thing to Commissioner, to your question, so, you know, the public cameras are in public places, there's no expectation of privacy. But to your point, if we've got the ability to record that video, and the concern is, do we have the ability to take that recording and start following or tracking somebody to see where they go without any right or read to know? The technology behind it has us the mechanisms where we can go back and see who's doing that, when they're doing it, and we've got those in place to make sure that there's accountability in place to prevent that from occurring.
Got it. Thanks for the clarity on that. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you for this very informative presentation. Just a couple of questions. You mentioned that we've had outreach already. What does that look like? Was it in person? Was it online? How did we accomplish that so far?
Yeah, it's been a combination of neighborhood watch meetings with the divisional senior lead officers. There's been a variety of different Zoom calls, bid in-person meetings, neighborhood council meetings. That particular case was done on Zoom, but a variety of different meetings, both done virtually, in person, and through the three areas through use of their senior lead officers and neighborhood watch programs.
Very good. And obviously, if we're going to enlist the support of the people across the city, it's going to have to be an ongoing effort of outreach and education for people so they understand fully what this program really does. My second question, in your comparative analysis slide, NYPD was the only department that had the box for unified platform checked. What does that mean?
That's a great question, Commissioner. So our initial intention as we roll this out, there is to be very vendor agnostic. We want to pick the best in class technology, but there's a lot of competitive technologies out there. I'll cite ALPR for example. Right now, there's a number of different vendors that are out there available to law enforcement that uses ALPR. For the department, for example, we use Vigilant, we use Flock, and we use an element of Axon. Currently, right now, for a detective to get a complete set of data returned, they have to go into those three platforms and get information back. For me, that's something I'd like to get out of the business of doing. I think with technology down the road, one of the things I've done in these travels is really communicate to my peers throughout the law enforcement community to start demanding from our vendors to share their APIs, their application programming interfaces. So each individual agency can pick the platform they want, but be able to integrate it all into one pane of glass, for lack of a better term. Because in reality, we may pick a particular vendor for the city of Los Angeles that's a strategic partner for us, that works for us. But I can guarantee you that not everybody else in the region is always going to be on the same page. So the ability to share information with one another, regardless of what that platform is key. New York has made a significant investment to be able to integrate different technologies all into one platform. They're able to see everything on one pane of glass. Most everybody else is not there yet, but I think putting a proper, appropriate pressure on vendors that deal in these technologies, letting them know what's needed for law enforcement will get us to where we need to be.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, you mentioned the pilot would probably encompass Central, Hollywood, and Van Nuys division. Why those three divisions?
The discussion that I had with Chief Moore initially is that his impression was that was in his travels, that those are the three communities that seemed to, that had communicated a desire to do that. We had a number of conversations with different city leaders and council people that expressed a desire to participate in that. So that was our initial read, and we picked those divisions based on the nature of them. Jeez.
And specifically, because that's on me. So let me talk about Van Nuys. The Ventura corridor, the Van Nuys corridor, the business community, Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, the Business Watch that's in that area relative to store break-ins and robberies and their staffs being accosted and believing that a greater prevalence of our presence, but also our ability to respond to those crimes was needed. In the Hollywood area, the Hollywood BID, the Hollywood Entertainment District, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, all brought business leaders together and retailers asking for us to improve upon the existing camera structures that are there and the current systems to expand upon that, because of Hollywood being a destination for so many tens of thousands of people to come there. But they've also seen this last year and a half, the challenges with recognizing as a tourist capital, car break-ins, recognizing individuals that are preying upon tourists and others. Then lastly, the downtown business core, the jewelry market. Back, one of the callers today, you may recall, was from the jewelry market. That downtown business core, the Figueroa corridor, that target at 11th and Fig is one of the highest retail loss locations that we have in the city. And yet, I will say, number 4 could easily be Wilshire. And so I've got number 5, 6, and 7. We don't have the capacity, and so we've landed on those 4, which is going to come at a disappointment to some others, but we need to start someplace.
Word is traveling fast, and the demand is growing.
No, thank you both. Again, I just would hope that we're in a position to defend our decision for certain divisions. If it's not based on data, and it's not based on surveys across all 21 divisions, we should be able to articulate why to those divisions that aren't going to get it and may want it for other reasons. So, again, with that, thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Look forward to it rolling out next year, and appreciate your time and effort and research into getting this done so far. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
We'll now move on to agenda item 4B, which is the department's report on relative to the authorization to possess firearms by peace officers, DACA recipients, and we have Director Rhodes and I believe Chief Reyna. Good morning, or good afternoon, whatever time it is.
I think it's still morning.
Okay, good morning.
President Suthers, with your permission,
I've already passed that out to them, so they already have it. Yeah, they already have the, that's all right. You came prepared.
Yeah. And for the record, you might, just because the person doing the transcription doesn't know what we've just talked about, can you describe what that is?
Chief Reyna first.
Good late morning, almost early afternoon, Commissioners, Chief Moore, Mr. Smith, Mr. De La Guerra. Director Rhodes and I are here today to discuss the department's new policy regarding hiring police officers who are members of the DACA program. Before we get into the policy, I believe it is important to discuss some of the background that brought us here today. DACA, which stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, is a 2012 Federal Executive Branch memorandum and is an administrative relief that protects eligible immigrants who came to the United States when they were children from deportation and allows them to become eligible for an employment authorization document. Some of the key requirements for DACA eligibility are that you are under 31 years of age as of June 15, 2012, you first came to the United States before your 16th birthday, you have lived continuously in the United States from June 15, 2007 until present, you are currently studying or you graduated from high school or earned a certificate of completion of high school or GED, or have been honorably discharged from the Coast Guard or military, and you have not been convicted of a felony, certain significant misdemeanors, or 3 or more misdemeanors of any kind. California Senate Bill 960, which was approved in September of 2022, and which became effective January 1st of this year, amended California Government Code Section 1031, which establishes the minimum standards for police officers in California. Senate Bill 960 eliminated the requirement that a police officer must be a citizen of the United States and established a new requirement that peace officers must be legally authorized to work in the United States under federal law. The California Commission of Police Officer Standards and Training, the regulatory agency for peace officers in the state of California, has adopted the new requirements in accordance with the law. In addition, the California Department of Justice has the authority to approve DACA members to possess firearms while employed as peace officers based on United States Code Title 18, Section 925A1. DACA members are issued a Social Security number, they pay taxes, and here in California can obtain, and by department policy must have a driver's license. And those applying for a position with our department must also pass all aspects of our background process. At this time, I wish to provide some insight as to the background of some of our DACA recruit officers and candidates. There are currently 10 DACA members in the academy. 1 is scheduled to graduate this Friday. 9 more by May of next year. Of the 10, 9 are from Mexico, 1 is from El Salvador. All the candidates grew up in Los Angeles and most still live in Los Angeles. And I do want to stress this next point. All of them entered the country between 1 and 8 years of age. Considering you must be at least 21 years of age to become a Los Angeles police officer, all of them have called Southern California home for many years. One of them was a former associate community officer with our department, and 1 held an administrative supervisory position with the city of Los Angeles. Others have held various jobs as case managers, senior IT manager, security guard, and sales representatives. 4 of the 10 have bachelor's degrees from local colleges, and 4 others possess associate's degrees. And there are 31 candidates in the background process. Unlike the currently suspended MOBNI program previously offered by the U.S. military as a pathway to citizenship, there's no pathway to citizenship for DACA members. Each member must renew their DACA membership every 2 years. It is our hopeful anticipation that this program will continue and that being gainfully employed with a professional law enforcement agency such as the Los Angeles Police Department will only benefit members during their renewal process. However, should a member not be granted their DACA renewal, the City of Los Angeles would need to take appropriate action and that the employee may no longer be eligible to be a police officer. The department's personnel division will continuously work with the city's personnel department to ensure proper auditing of our DACA employees' eligibility status. Although other jurisdictions outside of California, specifically Colorado, have successfully employed non-citizen officers, and additional states are considering similar legislation, we believe we are the only law enforcement agency in California that has drafted a formal policy recognizing the status of these employees and memorializing the right for DACA members employed as police officers by the Los Angeles Police Department to carry a firearm. At this time, Director Rhodes will discuss the policy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I think as many of you know, there's the Gun Control Act of 1968 when it was first published. It's a United States code, specifically 18 United States Code sections 921 through 931, does a number of things. It establishes regulations for firearms, and it also has a list of prohibited persons or unlawful acts That's found in 18 United States Code Section 922 and all of its subparts. One of the things found in 922 is 922 G5, which makes it illegal for any person who is an alien to illegally or unlawfully in the United States to possess a firearm. However, in addition, in the same Gun Control Act is 925A1. So 18 United States Code Section 925A1, which Chief Reyna mentioned. And that indicates exceptions to 922. So it specifically takes out as something that cannot have an exception to 922 domestic violence, people who've been convicted of that. However, it does provide for individuals who are in the United States or who have been issued a gun for the use of the United States or any department or agency or any state or department or agency thereof. That would include the Los Angeles Police Department. And so now that we have the candidates who are in our police academy and have passed through and are poised to graduate shortly, and who are in the United States under DACA, we have now a policy, the department has drafted a policy establishing the authority for these individuals to carry firearms. And that policy is before you. I want to just talk for one moment about what the amendment was. Previously, as published, it said the ability of LAPD officers to possess firearms, including those officers who are in the United States pursuant to DACA, applies not only to department firearms or ammunition, but also to firearms or ammunition purchased by the officer when the officer purchases a firearm for use in the performance of their official duties or other law enforcement purpose. We changed that so that there was no confusion as to what the department, or no overreach for the department. It now says the Los Angeles Police Department officers who are in the United States pursuant to DACA have the authority to possess a firearm for use in the performance of their official duties or other law enforcement purpose. They will be issued a firearm, and they may carry that for duties both on duty and law enforcement purposes off duty. That is the only change. So the policy is brief, direct. It has been researched. We have looked into it. We have conferred with our federal partners. But I will say this is not well-traveled ground, as Chief Reyna indicated. Nonetheless, we think it is important to have a policy, and we are therefore ready to answer any questions you may have about it.
I would add our thanks and appreciation to the City Attorney's Office, who assisted us in crafting this and joined with us in the research and contemplation of how such a policy would be crafted to address the concerns of the public, as well as those officers that are now peace officers, who as DACA recipients are peace officers both on and off duty, and define that in a way that we believe will withstand scrutiny.
Thank you, Chief. Director Rhodes and Chief Reyna, again, thank you for the hard work on this. I think it's really important that perhaps the LAPD is setting a precedent here, and I'll always go last because I know usually my questions are asked before you get to me. So I'll start with Vice President Shields for any questions or comments on this proposal.
Thank you, President Suthers, and thank you both for the presentation. And I know the hard work that went into this, kind of trying to tread new ground, but have it be in line with both what California law is directing us to do and also the current federal laws that are in place. And I appreciate that you've already conferred with both federal partners and the City Attorney's Office. One question that I have, and it's based mostly on some of the comments that we were hearing during public comment about this topic. This policy does not basically turn off-duty officers into on-call officers, correct? Like, they're still off duty. I'm just concerned that I'm making sure that we're not signing up for some type of argument that every officer is now on duty 24/7 and therefore should be paid as such. And so have you looked into that issue, and has that been properly addressed in this policy?
Yes, in short, yes. But a little bit more detail would be, the Law Enforcement Officers Safety Act has been in place for some time. And our officers have the power to conduct law enforcement activities when necessary. That is no different for DACA officers or other officers. That does not convert, that does not and has not converted all hours into on-duty hours.
And if I can clarify, you're also talking about, Commissioner, an area for a memorandum of agreement with our personnel. All police officers, sworn members of the city of LA, or as well as the state of California, are subject to recall, an emergency declaration and so forth. As sworn members of the organization, they are not compensated for that. That is part of their job description. However, on-call, standby statuses, those are terms that are used as a bargaining agreement with the labor. And I'm particularly proud of the work that has been done here, because we've tried to carve just what is necessary for the DACA, and to describe these individuals are be treated in the same basis of which non-DACA recipients are, as to the possession of a department firearm and its use or its possession in an off-duty capacity. Is that fair?
Yes. So there is equality, not separate but equal, but actual, on the same footing, having the same rights but also responsibilities.
Excellent. That's the only question I have. And again, great work in putting this together.
Thank you. Commissioner Kalanje?
Thank you. Just a quick question. For my own, super clarity, does this policy basically state that the DACA individuals would only be able to have a department-issued firearm, or could they have their own personal firearm? Just for clarity, so my understanding.
So currently, regulating firearms is in the purview of the federal government. And we have looked at state law and federal law and tried to do balancing and looked at analogous situations. And we do not propose to take any step that would be outside of our purview and in the purview of the federal government, the ATF. So what this currently allows for is the department-issued firearm. To the extent that to the extent that the law changes or becomes more clear, that's something we would have to look at.
Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you for the report. I'm happy to see that we're catching up with the rest of the nation on this. Appreciate it. No questions.
I only have one question. Where does post fit into all of this in terms of, are there any issues?
So obviously, Post, regulatory agency for the state of California for peace officers, are guided by state law. With conversations and correspondence we've seen, they're obviously in touch with the California Department of Justice, ensuring that this is allowed to happen. Like I had stated earlier, that they've already posted the change in requirements on their website. They've already acknowledged that to all the agencies throughout California, that they're supportive of this allowance for DACA members to be peace officers in the state of California and following the law.
So we are the only department at this time that's doing this?
We are the only department in California that we know of. We have,
Let's be clear, that it has a policy.
I'm sorry, that
The Sheriff's Department currently, LA County Sheriff's Department, has a similar number of recruit candidates that are currently going through their training, and there are other departments that have DACA, I understand, through meeting with Cal Chiefs, that have DACA recipients. What's unique here is that the state is attempting, its agencies are attempting to identify a clear policy that's defendable and it articulates the basis for this allowance. And we believe we're the first agency that has done that in the state of California.
That's correct. Through our research, we did not locate any other agency, and there could be other agencies in California or throughout the country to have a policy. We didn't come upon those agencies, but it's possible that someone else has a policy. But we believe at this point we're the first ones to have a policy.
Okay.
but we have received many requests and questions about what we are doing and whether we would share our policy when it gets adopted.
Okay. Well, that took away my next question or comment, which is, at this point, might this give us a competitive edge in recruiting, as I'm looking at Captain Patillo and a number of successful DACA recipients that are in California that would be eligible to apply for this department and be interested. It might be something that we want to explore.
That's correct.
Okay. Chief, anything? Okay. So with that, again, everyone here has expressed, let me just echo their comments and just fantastic work. Really appreciate it. Probably well overdue, but glad that we're leading the charge on this. I just think it's a wonderful opportunity to bring some people onto the department who've lived here essentially for their entire lives and can serve the city and be in public service. So with that, I would move that we approve the department's report.
I second.
Moved and seconded.
Mr. President.
Sir?
So long as it's moved with the correction or the amended attachment.
So I would move that we approve the department's report with the amendment that unfortunately is not dated, but we all have it. So I move and ask for a second.
I second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to the final regular agenda item, item 4C, Department's report relative to the response to City Council's request regarding the enforcement of LA Municipal Code 80.36.31, tour bus operations in the Hollywood Hills. And we have Commander Valenzuela. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Okay.
Commander Craig Valenzuela from the Commanding Officer of Traffic Group, here to talk about the tour bus and congestion up in the Hollywood Hills. As you all know, tour bus operations come along with the Hollywood Hills, and the Hollywood sign is the iconic tourist destination for everybody to see. West Traffic, Hollywood Division, and Council District 4 have had a long-running partnership to help alleviate congestion and enforce applicable laws. Council District has regularly provided funds to pay for overtime details, particularly during summertime as well as major holidays. Officers are deployed to provide high visibility patrol and to help keep vehicles moving, thus preventing congestion. Feedback from the Council District community members has generally been very, very appreciative and of having the officers up there and keeping traffic flow moving. But aside from the high visibility, one of the enforcement tools has been LAMC section 80.36.1, which in short prohibits vehicles over 6,000 pounds to operate on certain streets. However, officers are no longer issuing citations for this section due to input from LADOT, city attorney, and cases which have been dismissed by judges in court. Currently, the LAMC section does not align with the vehicle code. The vehicle code allows for local ordinance such as this section to be enforced in residential districts only, but there are non-residential sections which also have posted signs. California Vehicle Code Section 35701 requires that sections like this be enforced only in residential areas. Therefore, it is our view that an amendment to the LAMC section is needed to specify residential districts only, and the actual streets themselves get listed in the amendment to clearly delineate which streets are covered. Regarding education outreach, I have tasked West Traffic to work with LADOT and CD4 on a campaign to educate residents of their rights, the tour bus companies so they're aware and very clear on the restrictions and applicable laws, and the public at large through social media, the press, and any neighborhood watch, neighborhood council meetings that we can get ourselves into. Finally, I would like to emphasize that resources will continue to be deployed in this area to alleviate congestion and improve the steady flow of vehicles. This is largely done with the cooperation of LADOT and CD4, specifically the resources provided by CD4 to place personnel in the area during the most needed times. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Commander. Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? No? Okay. Hearing none, I would move that we approve the department's report and transmit to City Council. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Commander.
Thank you very much.
The board will now recess into closed session.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss items number 5A1 and 5A2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Commission has concluded closed session and will now have a report by the Executive Director, Mr. Tiefang.
Item 5A1, officer involved shooting number 003-23. Commission on a 4-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the Chief of Police, which were tactics, administrative disapproval, 1 Sergeant 1, 2 Police Officer 2s, tactical debrief, 1 Police Officer 1, drawing and exhibiting in policy, 2 Police Officer 2s, less lethal use of force in policy, 1 Police Officer 1, lethal use of force in policy, 2 Police Officer 2s. Item 5A2, non-tactical unintentional discharge number 014-23. Commission on a 4-0 vote adopted the recommendations of the Chief of Police, which were tactics, tactical debrief, 1 Police Officer 2. Drawing and exhibiting does not apply. Unintentional discharge, administrative disapproval, negligent discharge, 1 Police Officer 2. Relates to item 5B, 1 and 2 adjudicated. That concludes the report.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. With that, that concludes today's business. I would move that we adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.